Hey guys, so we've spent a few episodes here taking you through that big giant purple X sculpture build that we're doing for the SunTrax project as it's gone through its various stages throughout the different departments in the shop, and it has been challenging. From the beginning stages of engineering and planning, to Robert laying out and welding the entire frame, to Steve building and wiring up the skins, which consisted of buckets that would be placed up the center of the large middle section of the X to simulate the street markings on the center of a highway. And while Steve was building those, Robert constructed the massive steel structure that was needed to hold the 30-foot tall monster of a sign. After he completed the steel skeleton, he had to place the steel inside the frame he had built and then close it back up and weld everything around it. The entire middle section ended up weighing over 3.5 tons. So he literally had to build a rotisserie in order to spin the entire sign so that he could finish all of the welding at the proper angles.
And it's been an absolutely crazy process, and it's not done yet.
So where we are right now with the process is Robert has completely welded the frame. And now all of the other pieces are ready for assembly. My part of the process is to place the skins on the entire structure. And then the really cool part of this sign is I built these skins with a 2-inch recessed can, which is what we were calling the buckets. And now I've wired them with Hanley P2s, which are their minis. We've covered them with acrylic. And I'm now mounting these along the front and the back and the large center section of the X to simulate the roadway. It's going to look awesome. Now the acrylic looks yellow, but it's actually white. We had to cover the acrylic with a protective vinyl so that when it gets painted, we'll just peel that away and the actual lens will be white. And that was our next challenge. After the sign was fully assembled, we had to figure out how we're going to get this monster into the spray booth. So we built the stands that were strong enough to hold 3.5 tons. And then we attached large casters, so this would be able to move this thing across the floor and into the paint booth. So placing these stands underneath here were a bit scary because we weren't really sure if they were going to support the weight. But when we released the weight from the forklifts, and they were holding the sign up, we were relieved. But once we saw the stands were strong enough, we pushed the sign right over to the paint department so Renee and Saul could paint the giant X purple. So now the cabinet's out of paint. The paint is absolutely beautifully shiny, and man, it is huge. So now comes our issue of trying to pick this thing up, take it out the door and put it on the trailer and take it to the job site. And that's a whole nother process.
Hey, what could go wrong? Straps could break, fall into the ground, smash into a million pieces. I'm not rebuilding it, so.
She's coming.
All right, first flip coming up. All right, going up. Good.
Now that we have the large section and the 2 smaller sections secured on the trailers, we have to drive the almost 4 tons of sign 75 miles to the SunTrax test facility in Auburndale, Florida. This is a very, very large and heavy sign and a tricky install. We thought it was a good idea to have Robert out there on site for the install. He built most of this sign and he put it together at the shop once, so in case anything goes wrong or there are any questions, no one is more familiar with it than he is.
And something that we don't normally do, but due to the technical nature of this install, in addition to the 70-ton Maxim crane we brought out for the lift, we also hired master riggers to help rig up all of the sections of the sign. It's critical to get these right, If not, something catastrophic could happen.
So right now we're just setting the pedestals up there so they're in place. They're doing the leveling nuts, getting all that stuff done so we can finally set the pedestals. And then once those pedestals are in and bolted down, we'll fly the first section up. It's got the pole in it. Set it down, bolt it, brace it up, and then fly the big section in. Set it. Once that big section's in, it's self-supporting, but until that happens, we're gonna have to have it braced.
All stop. Cable down.
So the first step was to get the 450-pound pedestals to fit on the bolts that were already set in the cement footer. It felt really good to see the first one. I mean, both of them just dropped right where they needed to. It'll get in.
There we go.
Those are easy. Those are only 6 bolts. When we set the top, all 16 have to line up at exactly the time that the 2 line up to bolt the thing together.
But that's the one where you did all that in shop with all your bolts right there. So hypothetically, should be better aligned than the.
In theory.
In theory.
In a perfect environment on a perfectly flat surface that I shot with a laser and leveled, everything fit like a glove. Here's where all the mock-ups in the shop should really pay off. You know, that first leg of the X should line up perfectly with the 8 holes on top of the platform. The problem is that it weighs over a ton, so just sliding it a little one way or the other, trying to line up the holes, just isn't as simple as it looks.
All right, cable down.
Cable down. Cable down.
All right, hold that.
So those 8 bolts on the top of that platform lined up perfectly with the bottom plate of the support leg. Now comes the moment of truth. A huge 4-ton center section of the X. There's a lot more going on with the center section, so it might be a lot more difficult than the first piece.
The tricky part about lifting this, we can't scratch it. Number 1. Number 2 is the angle it has to go in to slide into a post and sit on the base. So we have to pick it up and basically take this end and lower it down with chain falls without the chain of the chain fall scratching into the piece. That's the trickiest part about this. That pipe right here in the bottom has to slide into a pipe on top, and then you have the base that has to line up with 6 bolts. So you have to line everything up at one time as it comes in on the perfect angle to slide in to do that.
What could go wrong?
Numerous things. Wind could pick up, rigging could fail, it not fit due to construction. Numerous things can go wrong. You would hope.
You tired of yanking on it? That's about good there.
Here we go. Are my arms bigger?
Yeah, you're all swole up now.
Swelled up, yeah.
I knew the round pipe from the center section was going to fit into the square tube on the lower leg of the X, but I had never actually assembled it to the platforms, bolted to the floor, and with the frames on. I mean, that was the more tricky part, is that it had never been together in its entirety. I had the frames together, they worked. I had the steel together, it worked, but I had never had the steel inside the frames and dry fit those ever.
Cable down easy. Cable down.
Yeah, I'll help.
Cable down. Cable down.
Keep coming.
Keep on coming. Nice and easy. We're getting it. Cable down.
I'll hold.
Oh, stop.
I'll hold. Let's see what we do.
So if the holes don't line up with the second platform, we can loosen the bolts on the first platform and kind of give ourselves a little bit of wiggle room, but not that much. I did measure the shit out of this X though, so it's gonna line up. I got him. Well, shit. My mathematics weren't very far off. You just know when you have a crane operator and riggers who know their shit. You know, we had designed and approved an install plan with FDOT beforehand. Once we got out here, you know, these guys were locked in. That crane lifted these huge heavy pieces like they were nothing.
I've been running cranes 25 years and they've went from just having a dial on the side of the boom that you looked at to this got 2 separate computer control systems in it. We've got this screen on this side. This over here is your weight. That's 10,000 pounds maximum capacity. And the load itself that we're tied to, we've got 2,300 pounds. This, like a bar graph, is your capacity. We're at 22% of what it's capable of at that radius. It's blue and then yellow if you get in red. If it overloads, you know where you're at. This is your radius, how far out your hook is away from your machine. Then it gives you all your information on your crane. It's your boom angle, your boom length, and your tip height, 90 foot up. Or you can see that little green dot, that tells you which winch you've got turned on, which control you're operating. This is your boom configuration. We've got 4 sections. I've got the outer 3 extended 100%, the base isn't. And then you've got the other thing it shows here is where your angle is on your rotation, on your 360 degrees, where you're located. Things like that are real helpful when you're doing a lot of picks back to the same area. You kind of look at it, it's just an aid to help you get right back. You know, like that one, we'd already set those bases. I knew I was about 80 foot out, so instead of them having to signal me, I could bring the load in within a foot or so where they need it, and then they could put it in easier. It aids in speeding up the production and make things go smoother. For the crane to work at full capacity, it has to be within 1 degree of level. This is a bullseye level. Come over here to this F7 button. That gives me, I can control all my outriggers if I need to raise it or lower it or to get it level. Then you've got other screens here. Controls to set your configuration. That shows how your crane scopes in and out your boom to set your boom lengths. I mean, it's amazing to me. I mean, I'm on the backside of it now. I'm old enough, but so much has changed just in the 25 years I've been doing it.
What's the most important thing you have to worry about when you're operating a crane and lifting loads?
You have to be centered over the load. You want to make sure you never go, pick up more than what the machine can handle. I taught the apprenticeship for several years. They laughed, the kids would tell me, I said, situational awareness. You hear that when you talk about pilots and fighter pilots and all that, but in a crane, you've got so much going on around you. You have to pay attention because one little thing, you got to have the basic of make sure the crane's level, make sure everything's in working condition, that you don't move too fast because like if you swing too fast, you could just swing it right on past your limit if it's a heavy load.
What's the wind restrictions here, especially here in Florida?
It varies by manufacturer. You always want to check in the operator's manual. This particular crane here is good for 25 mile an hour, working full capacity. Over 25 to 30, you're supposed to cut the capacity by half. Over 30, you're supposed to shut down and quit working. In Florida, the wind is always a concern. Another big concern in Florida is lightning. A while ago, while we had a break here, you see me on my phone, I wasn't playing video games. I was checking the radar because I saw clouds back over our back. So if I get lightning within 10 miles, shut it down.
I don't know how we're going to guide that thing.
We had a problem with the top steel support. We were having a problem with the lift, and we were trying to figure out a way to place guide ropes that they wouldn't be in the way of the poles sliding together.
There you go. How are we going to control this up there? I don't know. I don't know what to do at this point. But the problem you're going to have right now, the other one's on an angle. This one's straight.
But the crane operator told us he could get it to fit onto the pipe without any ground assistance. Yeah, I didn't think he was going to be able to land it on the pipe, but holy shit, he nailed it.
Oh!
There we go. That was impressive, and he loved playing that game. Now we just had the last piece, and that one was the easiest.
Hold that.
Carl just had to line up the pole with the 2 saddles inside the top section, and then it just slid right down in place.
Cable down. There you go. Cable down. Stop.
Now that's a big axe.